mind stuff. If you're familiar with yoga, especially the teachings of Patanjali, talk about the mind stuff, or the chitta, or the mind field. And when you start to investigate your own mind and your own life, because really, if you're gonna find relief from any of your suffering, or if you're gonna find clarity on your life or yourself, you're not gonna find it in your mind. It's gonna be found in moments where the mind is quiet. This has been realized for millennia. And what's valuable about this, beyond what I just said, is as far as self-discovery goes, we're often seeking inside of our mind to find what we are, but our mind is not what we are, and our mind actually can't even really fathom what we are. And if you just look at that statement, we look into our mind to find out who we are. Who's the we that is looking? Right? We need to look at the looker. If I am myself, I'm trying to find something that's outside of myself, it's totally futile and obvious, but we often just don't question. We assume, that we're going to see ourselves like we see everything else in the world. We assume that we're going to experience our soul or our spirit the same way that we experience all the rest of life. Like we assume that I'm going to experience God like I experience a tree or a bird. Now maybe on higher levels that's true, but not here for this moment, What's valuable here is when you realize that you're not your mind, you can start to see how it behaves and what it does. You start to develop discernment on how the mind operates and also its motivation. And you start to see that it's just really playful. It's just like a playful agent that's just it's pulling from memory. It has access to memory and all the knowledge that's been learned, and it just kind of pulls from all that stuff and plays in moments. It's playful when there's nothing going on. It's just like, if you think about daydreaming and all that kind of thing, it's just like rifling through possibilities and rewriting the histories of your life and experiences. When it goes untamed, when it goes undisciplined, this is what it does, and that's what causes trouble, because it doesn't care if what it's playing with is pleasant. It doesn't care if it's totally destructive. It doesn't care if it's evil. It's just playing. It has no discernment on right or wrong, or what is good or what is not good. It's just going bananas with thoughts and ideas and concepts and principles and the world, and playing out there, and what if we go and do this? What'll happen? And all that kind of stuff. So this is kind of what you start to discover when you embrace a quietude as yourself and start witnessing the mind objectively, meaning watching the mind as not yourself. So viewing the mind for what it really is, which is a thing. It's something that's being witnessed, right? Hope you're following me. So from here, when you start to realize that you're not your mind, you start to realize that all the personal qualities that you have are mind qualities. All the personal qualities that you have are mind qualities. In fact, all qualities are of mind. Okay? Anything that's observable inside of yourself has to come through the mind to be observed. Is that right? We can go slow. This is an important realization, because if you realize that, okay, all the personal stuff is in my mind, right? It's just coming from this storehouse of memory and these ideas, these imprints of time then the mind plays and creates identities with that. That's really what the ego really is. It's the identifier. It's the one that creates a deity out of things and creates and personifies everything based on its vision of the body and all that, but that's really not for now. But this is important because you see, when you realize that all the personal stuff's in the mind, you realize that, well, I've just confirmed before that I am not my mind. So then by kind of passively, you confirm you're not really a person. Okay. Now, the experience for everyone is the same in this way. So everyone has variations of what type of imprints, and that's what makes it seem like there's individuals, but the mind really functions very limited, in a very limited way, and it is the same for everyone. Everyone has the same mind. Again, with slight variations of detail and focus and attention and interest and all these things, but really, it really fundamentally only functions in a very specific, very predictable kind of way. And then you start to see, wow, it's the same. And then you also start to see, well, when human interaction comes into this, right? Normally, like, what happens is we have an interaction, and then like we accept or reject what's going on, and then we're either like in a good mood or a bad mood, you know, just to be really like raw about it, you know. So when you have like conflict, for example, what you'll realize, conflict can only exist between personalities. And then we've just confirmed that the personality is just mind stuff. So we've heard of the 4 agreements where it says don't take anything personal. Let's take that a step further and realize that you're not a person, and neither is anybody else. And all that's happening in the world is just mind stuff, playing with mind stuff. And it's really nonsense. It's really nonsense. So what do we do? Upon this realization, something really profound happens, though. So it's not to worry, because what happens when you start to shift your sense of self into your real self, which is the seer, you know, the witness, what's perceiving what's watching the world. You start to get in touch and in tune with the essence of that. And the more you stay as that, the more you keep, you know, because it's going to happen for a while. You know, you're going to get pulled into the mind. You're going to forget who you are. You're going to identify with the mind stuff. You're going to have interactions. All that stuff's still going to happen for a time, most likely. And it's important to have patience with that. You know, just stay as stillness, stay as presence as often as you can. Return to that as often as you can. And then what you start to realize is that presence is actually there all the time. There's never a moment where that's not there. This is where the ability to say something is eternal, how can that be known? Right? The self, the true self, is said to be eternal, or the soul is said to be eternal. How can anyone claim that? How is it possible for anyone to say that with any conviction? And to even get other people to believe that. I mean, I understand that it's a nice, comforting idea. The idea that I, myself, my soul is eternal and it never dies, is because on a human level, we're very afraid of death, and we don't want death to be real. So how is it possible that anyone could say something is eternal? Well, this is a glimpse at it. And you can only know something by being something. So the deeper I get in tune with myself as my real self, the deeper I can know. I have an innate knowing about me. And so from this position, all is set free. When I pull out of that, the mind stuff, when I realize I am not that stuff, and no one else is that stuff. Just as the mind is the same for everyone, the self is the same for everyone as well. And the self's essence is love. So when you are that, it's not like I love everyone, it's I am love, and everyone else is love too. And then the world changes. Because you've taken the mask off, you've taken the goggles off, and you can see things for what they really are. What do you think? Try now. Open now. Declare your identity. This is something that I've used many times is if there's a moment where it seems like I forgot who I was, or I'm wrapped up in some emotional state or something, declaring my truth. I am the one eternal self. I am beyond personal quality. For me, there's no conflict. It's not possible. You'll still see the mind playing in the world. It still all happens. It's not like the world's going to blink out and disappear upon this. The mind is still going to play. The mind is still going to do its thing. I had a great realization this morning where I'm just being, and there was something that I wanted to remember. I had a thought this morning. The mind played with something that I decided to choose to play with, to go to roll with, to elaborate on and continue. It's actually what came through was the inspiration for this talk that I'm having right now. And I went about my morning preparing my day and everything, and forgot the idea or the concept or this topic, the subject. And so went on my day and it wasn't there. And there's an inspiration still kind of resonating of shooting a video on the subject. And so I had simply asked my mind, I said, I would like to recall the subject that came through this morning. And now for me, there's been many times in my life where like something brilliant idea came through, brilliant according to, to me, came through and forgot it and was like, man, as the mind getting frustrated with itself. And so in this moment, just being my real self, being open and empty and just recalling, I would like to remember that moment. Can we bring that back? And like in an instant, it came through. Now the next thought that came through after that was, wow, my mind is really good. My mind's really getting better. And from that thought, spiraled 2 minutes later, I'm in this mind field and there's like a tornado of all these thoughts going on. And then realization of that, acknowledgement of like, whoa, this is going on right now. There's like such a stirring of mind. And it was because the mind came up with the thought, what a good mind, which gave it and opened it up into the invitation to like continue, to keep going, to like go off, And so it's important to acknowledge that, is because what this is an example of is how the mind reclaims your identity. It comes up with really good stuff, and the more that you do this, it stays along with you as you progress in anchoring your truth. It stays with you on that journey, and it kind of grows with you in a way. So some of the ways that it comes through is through terror, through fear, and things like that are very luring to pull you back into it. Because if you it'll come up with things in the realm of well, if you really, really do this, then like you're gonna die, or like it's not gonna work out, or you're never gonna do anything with your life. You're not gonna amount to anything. You're not gonna be a part of society. You're gonna be poor. You're gonna be like a bum on the street if you do this. It'll come up with things like that. It'll come up with tremendous fears of death. It'll come up with also really clever, smart, creative ideas to pull you back into that space of, I'm so smart, I'm creative, I'm an artist, I have such good ideas, all these things, even with the intellect. It's just so incredibly subtle, because something that I've had to deal with is because I find myself able to understand on an intellectual level all this stuff that I'm talking about now. I have a deep understanding of it, and I study a lot, that my mind actually uses that to pull me into the one that knows things, and creates this personal identity around this guy who has lots of knowledge and has an understanding of esoteric stuff. But it's still just the same as any underlying stuff that's out there. However, in this subject, it has the ability to guide us home if we listen, if we follow the teaching, and don't just, because what happens is often a subject like this, information will bump into the intellect and stop there. We have to let it go past the intellect. So this isn't like about understanding something. Understanding is okay, but the understanding needs to continue to permeate and guide your attention home, back to yourself where you're present. You'll know you're there. You'll know you're that, because you'll be beyond thought. There may be experiences of that where there's no thought, where thought is absent, and that's glorious. But also, it's not required for there to be no thought for you to be you. It's simply the identification needs to be rejected or acknowledged and discarded somehow. So this is incredibly valuable, again, on the human level, and this is really why I wanted to share this. It's because on the human level, when we're existing from this place, it changes how we disagree. It changes how we would commonly have resistance towards each other, because all of that stuff that makes it ugly is on the personal level. It's on the mind stuff level. But when we come from this is the level of spirit. The level of presence is the level of spirit, and we're not wrapped up inside the intellect even, and inside of the mind. Then the spirit radiates its essence, and then passes through the intellect, passes through the mind as a clear channel, and then the interaction unfolds in a very different way. Very different way. This is why the great sages and seers of time, had a presence of wisdom, and it has a presence of compassion and intelligence even, and wit, were all qualities, is because the channel for spirit to move through the intellect and the mind stuff was clear, and the identification never was lost through the interaction with the mind. When consciousness goes and interacts with the mind, that's where the forgetting happens, but it doesn't have to be that way. Remember, you are pure consciousness. Remember, you are pure presence, even while the mind is going. Very subtle thing. But this is the way of freedom, and this can support our lives in tremendous ways. Our personal lives, our human lives, and our interactions with the rest of the world. Everything changes, and it's beautiful. Many blessings, friends.